premium posts.
Yeah, I am. The first one.
That's nice.
According to my inbox, Paul, you and I are rich. Rich.
Oh my God, tell me.
Oh, I'm on the wrong tab. That's not good. According to my inbox, because somebody assumed that I and Microsoft, we made yesterday, Paul. Or actually, say you and I reported during our earnings call yesterday. I'll be Satya, you can be Amy Hood.
Okay.
$43.1 billion in revenue. And you and I, in our joint bank account, put $15.5 billion. So I think we can afford lunch today.
Hey, I would take $1.5 million and you'd never hear from me again.
Yeah.
Well, you would, as I often say.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think, would I really not hear from you?
No, you would hear from me.
It's usually text
It would
late
be
at
mostly
night.
pictures of my feet on a beach.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, look at us making money.
Yeah.
It's
Microsoft
fun.
had a phenomenal quarter pretty much across the board. I mean, I would think
Yeah.
that if you were in any business unit at Microsoft right now and you had a bad quarter, like they'd be looking and be like, maybe you're not the right person to lead this because,
Nice. So, oh, wait, have I not posted this? I thought I did. Yeah, I did. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess depending on how you look, obviously, we collectively focus on all of Microsoft's businesses, but on Thurrott.com, I kind of look at the consumer stuff. I did see a really interesting comment by Satya Nadella, I think it was, during the post-earnings conference call where he tried to like kind of draw in all of the stuff that's happening between Xbox, Surface, maybe I didn't really say Surface, but Microsoft 365, we have this growth happening in our consumer subscriptions, and it's like, do you? I mean, you do. You do. But last year was such a special condition, wasn't it?
yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
benefited all of those things, right? Windows through PC sales, especially Surface PC sales, although they didn't do as well this quarter as I thought they should have. And then Xbox, obviously, with the consoles, which still can't be found in stores, and the growth in the subscriptions, which they just tried to double the price of. But anyway,
Yeah, like so like in hindsight, that maneuver looks terrible. Like the optics couldn't have been any worse. It's like, yeah, we're gonna double this price, and then they come out and they say we have record revenue across every business, and then it's like, did you really need to like? Did you?
Yeah, I know. The other thing that, and I'm actually still looking for this. Did you see they didn't delineate between Xbox Live Gold, meaning like paying subscribers and non-paying, right? So, at least to my knowledge, unless it was somewhere else and I'm missing it. But in the call, they mentioned, I think the number was 100 million subscribers.
Well, I think they said
monthly
users,
active users.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. Because there's a free version, right, which used to be called Xbox Live Silver.
Well, and then there's
Xbox.
also like Minecraft on different. There's Xbox on different platforms too, so it's not exclusively console driven either.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not. But those guys aren't necessarily paying every month.
Correct. Correct. Yep.
And so I don't know what to say to that.
So I started to plot some of these numbers just because more so want to watch this over the long haul. Now, I had to make like a pretty bold and brash like starting point, and I'll see if you agree with this because, in my opinion, Game Pass actually launched like 3 years ago or something like that.
That's true.
Right? But it launched as like a nothing thing.
It's still technically in beta everywhere except console, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
So my starting point was actually in May, because May was when Microsoft said, hey, we have 10 million Game Pass subscribers. And I didn't want to plot 0 to 10 million and try to compare it to other things because I didn't think that comparison was going to do any sort of justice. So what I've done is I've plotted, we've gotten 3 data points since May. We've gotten 10 million, and then in September we got 15 million. And then yesterday we got 18 million. Now we've also gotten some Xbox Live figures. We've gotten 2. In May we got 90 million. And then yesterday we got 100. So you can probably assume that in September, right, the difference is 10. You split it in half. September was probably around 95 Xbox Live million monthly active users. Roughly, just interpolation. On a percentage basis, Game Pass made up about 11% of the active user base. In
Okay.
September, it was 15, and now we're up to 18%. So I'm just watching the dynamic of how much of the active user base of Xbox Live is Game
Is
Pass.
not just paying, but paying a premium.
Right, because
And I think that's
we can
sorry.
assume that the Game Pass Ultimate people or Game Pass people are paying. So you can look at the potential growth for Game Pass as these subs as the whole of Xbox Live monthly active users, because that's their target market. So they have, and this is why they're pushing it so aggressively, such a massive potential here, because you can just look, they've got 18% of their total user base is converted. They've got 82% left they can target.
It would be helpful to know how many Xbox Live Gold customers there were,
Right,
because
it would be.
that would be the thing you want to compare to
But
Xbox.
we'll never get that.
Right. And you'll also never get a mix of which Game Pass subscriptions people are paying for.
Mhm.
But whichever one it is, a console, PC, or Ultimate, they're paying a lot of money compared to an Xbox Live Gold, and certainly compared to a free customer.
Yep.
And that 18% today is much more lucrative than that number suggests, right?
Mhm.
It's probably, that's why the Xbox Live Gold number would be kind of interesting, because those guys are on a roughly $5 a month plan.
Right.
Game Pass is roughly 10 to 15, depending on the subscription. So double or three times, right?
Mhm.
But it's hard to say. So in some ways, from like a revenues perspective, it's possible that Game Pass is closer to 36 or 50%, or from a revenue perspective, maybe more. I don't even know. It's kind of hard to say.
Yep. So Xbox also crossed $5 billion for the quarter as just an Xbox, as an org, which was done for the first time, which is just phenomenal, which kind of puts it into perspective of Surface, which barely crossed $2 billion. So Xbox is more than twice as big as Surface.
Here's the other thing. Surface and Xbox, if we had looked at these things 2-3 years ago, 5 years ago, certainly, whatever, are two hardware businesses, right?
Yep.
Today, Xbox is evolving into a services business, right?
Sure.
Obviously, there's hardware. Services are so much more lucrative than hardware, right?
Yep.
They are not inventory that sits in a box that doesn't get sold, that gets devalued every day. The R&D is much less expensive. The overhead, overall, everything, from beginning to end is less. So Xbox can benefit from Microsoft's transition to the cloud in ways that Surface can't. I mean, obviously there are tie-ins with Microsoft 365 and so forth. And yes, you can buy a Surface on what is essentially not a subscription plan, but like a installment plan or whatever. But they're just and I'm sorry, I gotta bring up this Bright thing, because I haven't published this yet, but okay. So there's no safety net for Surface here. Like the growth was only 3% year over year in a year in which PC makers and Intel and processor vendors could not make enough. They only raised sale at a holiday quarter by 3%. That's crazy to me. That's crazy. And that kind of tells me that maybe they have the wrong mix of products for the market.
Potentially. I mean, I would have thought, see, what's kind of hard to tell too is because they don't break down their SKUs of what actually sold. I would really love to know what the new Surface Laptop Go sold, because I would imagine that actually probably sold in a decent volume potentially.
And yet,
but
you say that? Why? You just mentioned that in passing. Microsoft is the king of soft numbers. Mention that you launched some new products last quarter. Now they don't mention any of them. Xbox, you get lots of numbers for different parts of the business. There's gaming overall. There's hardware, content, and services revenue. It goes on and on and on. And then Windows too. I mean, Windows has pro sales to PC makers. They have pro sales to PC makers. One was up, one was down. They kind of PC revenue. I'm sorry, Windows revenue overall. Again, sorry for this. Was only 1% overall growth year over year to PC makers. But this one, there is a safety net. There is an asterisk to that. A year ago, those sales benefited from the expiration of Windows 7 support. So those numbers a year ago were artificially high. Windows is kind of mixed to me. Like I said, pro revenues were down. Most of Microsoft's Surface products, I would imagine, let me think about that. Well, a good chunk of them certainly are pro, right? Windows Pro SKU, but Actually, they're putting home on more and more of those too. I don't know. I expected more. I got to say, I really thought Surface might have been in the 2.5 billion or up
Oh
range,
wow, that
right?
would have been a massive quarter for them.
Yeah. I mean, what were they a year ago? They had to have been 1.8
I think
or something.
1.8 or something like that.
Yeah. So they were very. It's just, God, it's so close to being flat. It's a
Yeah,
little alarming.
as you were talking, what's running through my head is, unlike Xbox, to which I think your point is, and what we talked about is extremely accurate, right? There's an upside to Xbox that is massive for Microsoft.
Yeah.
That doesn't really exist on the Surface side. I bet we find that there's going to be sort of like this equilibrium balance point, that Surface is always just going to float between 1.5 and $2 billion per quarter, and Microsoft honestly just might be happy with that, because I bet they look at it, they're like, look, if we make money on the hardware, that's great, but our intent is we just have to
Do you think
continue
they
to
do make
support the
money?
PC.
I hope they do make money on it. I don't. I bet they don't
I
overall.
think I want to say they started to, but like it's hardware. Their margins aren't Apple, and they're not ever
Margin's
going to
going to
be
be
there.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I think a lot of the value proposition of Surface for Microsoft as a business is just the impression of the hardware, that the
Right.
public perception. I think is important, but also the tie-in to services like Microsoft 365 or
Hmm.
OneDrive or even Game Pass. Because you might grab a controller and play, stream games to a computer that might otherwise be terrible for playing games.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But it's just not as obvious. Well, you can see the difference. I mean, Xbox is an established business for sure,
Yep.
but um, I've often sort of said like Windows is probably 75%, 75, 80% of the revenues from the more personal computing
Hmm.
division or whatever it's called, business unit. This it's hard to say what it was this quarter. I mean, you said 5 for
For Xbox.
For Xbox,
Yep.
2 for Surface. So most of the rest of that has to be Windows. So that means it was 50%. But Xbox was much higher than usual.
Oh yeah, and it's not there. Well, they'll probably still have high sales for a while, but their
Yeah,
percentage growth was skewed because it was compared to the Xbox One end of life, effectively.
I didn't. I don't think I put that into the article. Yeah, did I? Wait,
Because
let's
they
see.
said sales were, or hardware percentage sales were up like 86%. Well, it's like I would have been shocked if it was anything else, and
Yeah,
honestly, probably
actually,
could have been higher because they couldn't even make enough.
yeah, gaming. That's right. So gaming revenue. I can't find numbers. I'm sorry. Anyway, it was up 51% year over year. So they expect in the current quarter to be roughly 40%. So it's still incredibly high. And then
Hmm.
Xbox content services in the mid 20% range. That was 40% this past quarter. So those are still huge. Any double digit growth on Xbox is awesome.
Yep.
Obviously, they wish they had made more of those things, but they'll get there.
And then they also announced Office 365 commercial revenue grew at 21%. They didn't tell us commercial seats, but they did tell us Microsoft 365 consumer subscribers are at 47.5 million, that's a lot. I mean, that's
Yeah, it's not bad. It kind of drips up,
yeah.
like it. You don't ever see like a 10 million jump or anything. But the one thing there's always a little asterisk to that too, because um, Microsoft's revenues in some ways can go down from these subscription services, but they stay steady at a lower rate over time. Whereas,
Hmm.
in the old days when you had like box sales of Office, you would have little spikes with each version. Um, so there's always a little note about that. But the cost of the business goes down, and obviously the long play here is the right one. I mean, services, in the same way that software is more lucrative and has a lower overhead than hardware, services do the same to software because you remove the delivery part of it and the client upgrading and updating and all that stuff, and it's the. I mean, I'm just describing cloud computing. It's just it's a better business if you can get into it.
Yeah. So it's overall just an incredibly healthy quarter for Microsoft. I mean, there's really,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, everything was up across the board, and 47,
Well,
47 or 43,
43.
43.7. Yeah.
To me, Microsoft. It's not like they were stuck at a plateau per se, but I
Hmm.
feel like there was a long period of time where Microsoft revenues were always about 30 billion, and the net income was always 11
Hmm.
ish billion for some reason, right? We are now seeing the net income is up half again, which is crazy from that figure, and then revenues, I guess we'll call that 25%. But we, this thing keeps going up and up. I mean, Apple will announce their earnings and this will acute like a corner store, but no, but it's just impressive across the board. And the neat thing about this quarter is every business we just talked, well, not exactly, but at this point in time, every business we just talked about really is kind of old school, Microsoft stuff. It's not the cloud services. There's a whole nother story about that stuff, intelligent cloud and the Microsoft 365 stuff. Is going gangbusters too. Obviously, I mean, in many ways, that's maybe the bigger story collectively, but it's interesting to see these businesses that I happen to care about and that we cover here on Thurrott.com had a great quarter,
Yeah.
And maybe it's temporary. I don't know.
That's the next big question is at some point here, life will go back to actually, an analyst even asked this, like, do they expect like things to drop off once like kind of life goes back to normal? And they dodge the question as they always do.
Sure.
But that's going to be a big question. And I think that Microsoft is assuming, and maybe not wrong, so that once people are into these services, they're not just going to go back out of them once they are moving back into the office.
Yep.
So we'll see.
A lot of this stuff is going to have staying power for sure. I mean, Surface is going to go up, down based on whatever the product mix is and prices and so forth. Xbox the revenues are going to go down, but I mean, its presence in the market should go up as subscriptions are more and more important. And then, Windows sales, I mean, I feel like overall we've raised that plateau from what it was, because we were stuck at the 250, 260 area for a while. And now I think it hit almost 300 this past quarter. And that's probably an anomaly, but maybe it's a little higher, which is great.
Yep. So anyways, that's the earnings hangover. We'll see. I imagine Microsoft stock's just going to keep, kind of riding where it's going. Next quarter will continue to be interesting. If you're still trying to buy an Xbox, they said, hey, supplies to continue going to be strained. So no big. They
had said something to that effect last year. That they expected. Unfortunately, that might be the case through I think it was April. They said.
But if you want to buy Microsoft 365, it's not constrained. You can go buy one of those.
There's a lot of those left. If you're in the market.